Marginal analysis, the cost of the next one. In our previous discussions, we followed John as he navigated the physical constraints of his garage and the foundational math of fixed and variable costs. He now knows what his rent is and how much he pays for switches and keycaps. But as John sits in his workshop, surrounded by half-finished prototypes and a growing stack of orders, he faces the most critical question any entrepreneur must answer. Should I produce just one more unit? To answer this, John must move beyond looking at his total expenses and start thinking at the margin. In the world of high-stakes economics, as Gregory Mankiw emphasizes, rational people and successful managers make decisions by comparing marginal benefits and marginal costs. This lesson is about mastering that extra calculation, the cost of the very next keyboard that rolls off John's assembly line. Let's define our terms precisely. Marginal cost is the increase in total cost that arises from an extra unit of production. For John, this isn't about the average price of all the keyboards he has made so far. It's about the specific financial weight of keyboard number 101 compared to keyboard number 100. If John's total cost to produce 100 keyboards is $5,000, and the cost to produce 101 keyboards is $5,060, then his marginal cost for that 101st unit is exactly $60. Understanding this number is the secret to strategic scaling. If a customer offers John $70 for that extra keyboard, he knows he should take the deal because the marginal revenue exceeds the marginal cost. But if the market price drops to $55, producing that next one would actually erode his existing profits, even if his business looks profitable on a total cost basis. To understand why marginal cost behaves the way it does, we have to look back at the physical reality of John's garage, specifically the concept of diminishing marginal product. Remember, as John adds more workers to his limited garage space, the extra output each new worker provides begins to decline. This physical inefficiency has a direct financial consequence. When the garage becomes crowded and workers have to wait to use the 3D printer or the soldering stations, John is paying for labor that is becoming less and less productive. Consequently, the cost of producing each additional keyboard starts to climb. This is a fundamental law of the business engine. As marginal product falls, marginal cost rises. In John's spreadsheets, this will appear as a marginal cost curve that slopes upward, reflecting the reality that expanding production becomes increasingly expensive the more he tries to squeeze out of his current setup. This rising marginal cost interacts with John's average costs in a very specific way. To visualize this, imagine John's average total cost, ATC, as a U-shaped curve. At low levels of production, his average cost is high because his fixed rent is spread thin. As he produces more, that average cost drops until it hits a turning point. That turning point is exactly where the rising marginal cost curve intersects the average total cost curve. Economists call this the efficient scale. It is the quantity of output that minimizes the average total cost per keyboard. For John, finding this point is like finding the sweet spot on a tennis racket. If he produces less than the efficient scale, his marginal cost is lower than his average cost, meaning that making more keyboards will pull his average cost down. If he produces more than the efficient scale, his marginal cost is higher than his average cost, meaning that every new keyboard is actually pulling his average cost up. Why does this intersection matter so much for John's strategy? Because it tells him exactly when his business is operating at peak efficiency. When John's marginal cost is exactly equal to his average total cost, he is producing at the lowest possible cost per unit. This doesn't necessarily mean he should stop there. Profit maximization depends on the market price. No, it gives him the baseline for his competitive edge. If John knows his efficient scale is 150 keyboards a month at a cost of $50 each, he knows that any price above $50 makes him a profit. And he can use this knowledge to outmaneuver competitors who don't understand their own cost structures. He isn't just guessing. He is using marginal analysis to steer his company toward the most lean and effective version of itself. Ultimately, mastering marginal analysis transforms John from a reactive business owner into a proactive financial strategist. He stops asking, "How much did I spend last month?" and starts asking, "What is the cost of my next move?" By focusing on the margin, John can decide whether to hire that next assistant, buy an additional printer, or stay late to finish one more batch. He realizes that the total and the average are just history, but the marginal is the future. This is the logic used by the world's most successful firms, from tech giants to local startups. They don't just grow for the sake of growth. They grow only when the marginal benefit of the next step outweighs its marginal cost. As John masters this principle, he ensures that every keyboard he builds adds value not just to his customers, but to the long-term health and survival of his growing business engine.